Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So in this video we are going to start off with remediation techniques and we'll continue from where we left in the previous video. So let's get started. Also, if you haven't watched my previous video, you may check it out. So starting with the waste management, water management for remediation techniques. So there are certain natural and chemical ways for self purification, and we do not need to follow certain set of processes. All right. Also, to start this topic, the wastewater management, or something that we are very much familiar or may be familiar with these terms. All right. So wastewater management, as in general, as we know, there are three types. This wastewater can be managed using three methods, which is primary, secondary and tertiary. So that is one chemical method that is generally followed for segregating wastewater. All right, but there are certain self-purification natural systems in nature that helps to segregate wastewater. So these are some of them, such as sedimentation, oxidation and sunlight. So these are certain natural forces for self-purification. So this is nothing related with chemical or physical factors, but this is something that happens on its own. So sedimentation is something that in which heavier particles settle down and lighter ones stay at the top. Also oxidation of organic matter. So this is something that happens on its own with time. And sunlight that stimulates algal growth, which thereby releases oxygen. All right, so this is something, these three are some natural processes that are involved in self-purification. All right, so talking about some of the factors that help in the self-purification. All right, so first is the temperature. All right, so higher the temperature, more is the biological activity and less is the dissolved oxygen content. All right, so higher temperature means quicker oxidation or quicker biological reaction. Also, the second process is velocity. So higher the velocity, higher is the oxygen diffusion rate. All right, so higher the velocity, in it's the higher oxygen rate that is present in the organism, and thus imbibes or improves the oxidation rate. Also talking about rate of re-aeration, or the facility which facilitates self-purification. So basically temperature, velocity, rate of re-aeration and availability of initial dissolved oxygen and amount and type of organic matter. Alright, also more biodegradable organic matter, more is the BOD and less is dissolved oxygen. Also, so types of microorganisms present. So this is, I think, was one of the most important points. All these 3-4 points, as we know, this is something that is very general, and definitely temperature, velocity, rate of re-aeration and aeration, availability of dissolved oxygen and amount and type of organic matter is something very general. All right, so that is something understandable and one knows. Also talking about the sixth point, which says that types of microorganisms present. So this is something that is never under our control. So this is depends on the type of climate, type of environment that is present in it, and thus the type of microorganisms are present in that particular environment. All right, so types of microorganisms mainly influence these self-purification steps. All right, so these microorganisms such as algae and bacteria process of facilitate self-purification. So there are different types of algae and bacteria that facilitates different sorts of self-purification processes. All right, and with that we need all of these natural or these factors that are responsible for self-purification. So moving from there, so coming to the disposal of untreated water. All right, so the untreated water or the wastewater, this needs to be disposed as soon as possible for avoiding any sort of diseases or any sort of unhealthy activities. All right, so in this it is dilute or dispersed, it's diluted and dispersed, it is dumped in secure landfills, in sealed drums and all other containers, also in deep well disposals, and so that also. So these are three general techniques, so you can just read about them or just might remember these key points: dilute and dispose, secure landfills and deep well disposals. So talking about the main part that we have been studying from our junior classes is the sewage treatment plant. So this is the wastewater treatment or the sewage treatment plant, how the drained water or the sewage water gets treated. Alright. Also, it prevents discharge of toxic chemicals or excess nutrients in the wastewater. So more this. So talking about the sewage treatment. So it's the process of removing contaminants from domestic industrial wastewater. Alright. And it includes physical, chemical and biological processes. So it includes everything in short. Alright. So it has physical, chemical and biological processes involved in it. Also there are certain objectives for sewage treatment plants is definitely to improve water quality. That's prime objective. Also to improve public health and environmental safety, and develop useful product from solid waste, convert hazardous into non-hazardous disposable effluent, prevent contamination of surface and groundwater, which may cause all of the diseases such as waterborne diseases, odor development, accessibility to flies or other animals. So these are certain important objectives that for the reason we are carrying out sewage treatment. So there are certain more objectives such as should be sustainable and cost effective, should have proper sewage management, and it is essential to remove excess rainwater and overall maintenance of ecosystem integrity. Also it helps to digest organic matter to a point where it cannot be decomposed further. So these were some of the objectives that works under sewage treatment plant. So let's talk about the stages, which is the most important part of sewage treatment. All right, which includes preliminary treatment, then comes primary, secondary and tertiary. All right, so preliminary, it starts off with preliminary treatment, and we have primary, secondary, tertiary. So of the processes. Also, before starting these processes, these two terms are very important: effluent, sludge, and all right. So effluent is the liquid discharge from any source. So this is effluent is something that is discharged or that is leaving the source. All right, and sludge is the product that is formed after decomposition. All right, or this is the product of biological treatment of water or wastewater, and it is comprised of solids found in wastewater plus organisms used in treatment process. So starting off with this, so this is a general layout of this. I'll be explaining each and every point in detail. So this is the basic layout of it. So these are, so before moving to the primary treatment, we have a preliminary step. I'll be explaining after this picture. So as the preliminary steps gets over, or basically in preliminary step, what happens is it basically involves removal of large particles, large rocks or large sand particles, or that is filtered or that is churned out from the system, churned out from the wastewater. Thus after that it enters the primary stage. So in this primary stage the screening takes place, whereas the less small particles, less bigger particles are screened out, and thus it moves into the sedimentation tank, where the sedimentation takes place, where the heavier particles settle down and the lighter ones stay at the top. All right, so this is the sedimentation tanks. So as the upper lighter part moves ahead in the process for further purification, which is known as the secondary treatment, and the leftover part of the heavier dirt moves down and gets collected as sludge. All right, so gets collected in the digester and thus is dried to form sludge. All right, thus sludge is nothing but the product of the treated water, so which contains all of the solids and everything. All right, so as the upper layer of the sedimentation tank, which contains impurities, is moved further, which is known as the secondary treatment. So in this, what happens is in this area the water is taken into aeration tanks, where it is supplied with oxygen and other things, and thus the process gets carried out. And again we have a sedimentation step. All right, so in this sedimentation step the same thing happens, and the lower layer gets deposited as sludge again, and then we have the process of disinfection with chlorine or any other disinfectant for cleaning it. So this was the basic layout of the process. So I'll be explaining each and every step after this. Start. So again we have another as you can see the picture here. So Brad screener comes under preliminary step. It removes all of the larger particles, and then it's all the same as I've explained you. So I'll be explaining each and every step. So start off with that. So this is the step. So this is a general diagram that I have for you. So I have 2-3 diagrams I've shown you for this stage. So advanced is nothing but the tertiary treatment. Alright, so let's start off with this. So starting with the wastewater treatment, and what it talks about is the preliminary step. So it is nothing but the mechanical or physical treatment process. In this, the larger particles are removed. In this, coarse solids and other larger non-degradable materials are removed, and process involves screening and sedimentation. Alright, so sedimentation is something that is done twice or thrice in the entire process. Alright, so the first sedimentation process is carried out in preliminary treatment, alright, with screening. So velocity of the water is maintained so as to prevent the settling of most organic solids. Also to protect the pump and equipment, and it is composed of bar, screen and grid chambers, and sometimes it's called communicators. So I'll show you a picture of a communicator in the next slide, and how it looks like, which are included in the preliminary treatment, which is basically included to reduce the size of the large particles so that they will be removed in the form of sludge in the subsequent treatment process. Basically, there's a grinding thing to remove it. So basically these are two things. So one is bar screen and one is grid chamber. Alright, so this is a physical catcher in which large objects are trapped in it so that the water is not so that the entire thing does not get carried out. Also, grid chamber it removes high specific gravity solids, which includes rock, coarse gravel, sand, glasses pieces, gritty materials and small fragments. Also, these are of two types: horizontal flow grid chamber and aerated grid chamber. Alright, so these are two components important for preliminary treatment. Also, this is the picture of a communicator. Also, water flows through the grinder assembly, and the grinder consists of a rotating or oscillating gutter. So this is what communicator looks like, or this is some sort of a grinder. In this, solids passed into it and are chopped or shredded between the two gutters, so that these bigger particles get converted to these smaller particles. Also, so we're talking about the second step, which is the primary treatment, or the most important treatment of wastewater treatment. Though all of them are important, but getting the primary treatment right is the most essential step. So the primary so in this, it starts with the sedimentation tank. Alright, so as the water contains some gravels or small rocks, after passing through the communicators in the preliminary process, it straight on moves to the sedimentation tank. So the primary treatment starts off in the sedimentation tank. Alright, sedimentation tanks may be rounded or rectangular basins, and it will be having a hydraulic retention time between 2 to 3 hours, and it is a gravity driven physical sanitation process. So basically the heavier particles will go down and the lighter ones will stay up. Alright, so all the heavier particles which get collected here thus move through this pipeline and gets collected as sludge. Alright, and the sludge contains all of the solid or the bigger particles, and it removes large suspended solids and which are able to settle down materials. So this is how, or you can see it as a clarifier also. Alright, sedimentation tank can also be referred to as a clarifier. So in this, wastewater flow is slowed down and removes and reduces 50 to 70% of influent. So influent is something that gets into the system, and effluent is that is discharged from the system. Alright, so 50 to 70% of influent total suspended solids are removed, and 30 to 40% of incoming BOD level, and 65% of the oil and grease are reduced. So all of these are reduced. Alright, and process involves sedimentation, skimming and flotation. So skimming is nothing but removing of oil and grease. Alright, and suspended or solids and putrescible organic matter called scum floats on the surface and are removed by skimming. Alright, all the oil and on the grease that floats on the surface or the scum is removed with the help of skimming, and the heavier solid settles at the bottom is called primary sludge, alright, or biosolid. It may be considered sufficient treatment if the wastewater is used to irrigate crops, alright. Also, it produces a homogeneous liquid capable of being treated biologically and a sludge that can be separated, treated, or processed. It results in biosolids, rotating flow, primary sludge collected to the central well and removed from the bottom of the tank by sludge. So this is something that is not very much important, but this is just for the information. Also, it is pumped to an aerobic digester, and resulting wastewater is pumped to the secondary treatment facility. Alright, so after the water has been treated through the sedimentation tank, the resulting wastewater is pumped to the secondary treatment facility. Alright, so these are some types of sedimentation tanks. So this is the rectangular one, this is a circular one with a big diameter, this is a hopper bottomed upward tank. So these are three types of sedimentation tanks. So coming to the secondary treatment, or something that involves the presence of microbes or microbes do the job heavily. So most organic solids present in the effluent from the primary treatment are stable, unstable, biodegradable, and decompose readily through biochemical processes. Alright, so basically in secondary treatment what happens is it involves these two steps. Alright, so this in secondary treatment what happens is the first step is the aerobic decomposition, which involves aerobic oxidation, and the second step is anaerobic decomposition or putrefaction. Alright, so this stage removes almost 80 to 90% of organic solids, and anaerobic and facultative bacteria decomposes organic material. So talking about the aerobic decomposition first, or aerobic oxidation, then we'll talk of putrefaction or anaerobic decomposition. So talking about aerobic decomposition, so aerobic as well as facultative bacteria oxidize organic matter in the presence of oxygen. Alright, and biological oxidation results in producing more microorganisms and inorganic end products such as CO2, ammonia, water, and heat. And the rate at which microorganisms metabolize the organic all the organic products varies. Alright, so it depends on basic content of the oxygen and the environmental conditions provided to them. So this is the aerobic decomposition. So talking about aerobic decomposition, so it has a high rate of biological process, okay? And it has relatively small reactive volumes, and it has high concentration of microorganisms which are well mixed and heated. So these are carried out in small reactor volumes, and it has high microbial growth because of the well controlled environment. Alright, and talking about the anaerobic decomposition or putrefaction. Alright, so it converts the complex organic matter which has been formed from the aerobic decomposition into simpler organic compounds of nitrogen, sulfur, and carbon which can be assimilated. Alright, or anaerobic microbes survive by extracting or consuming nitrates and sulfates. Alright, so these all of these which are converted, these complex organic matter which has been formed from the aerobic decomposition gets converted to simpler compounds of nitrogen, carbon, or sulfur, which is then, or which is what the anaerobic microbes or bacteria assimilate or absorb within themselves for their survival. Alright, so it involves gases like ammonia, hydrogen, methane, which produces bad odor or bad smell. So moving from this, so secondary treatment. So we're talking about the secondary treatment. So it is carried out in a number of ways. So as we know, it is carried out in two ways: the anaerobic and aerobic decomposition. So this is just not carried out in so the process is these two, but the way it is carried out is different. The way I mean the reactor or all of the things that are carried out, the mechanism is different. Alright, so these two are important processes that are carried out in either fixed film growth system or suspended growth systems. Alright, so in fixed film growth systems, it involves trickling filters or biofilters, rotating biological contactors, or fluidized beds. or it is carried out in suspended growth systems, which includes activated sludge or oxidation ditches. So these two are important. These two are important machines or important growth systems that are incorporated in the secondary treatment for carrying out these anaerobic and aerobic decompositions. All right, so these are some of the things. These are trickling filters. As you can see, this have a lot of information, as you can see. So you can just pause the video and just read on all of these. So this is not something that is very much important. All right, so it has a biofilter that helps in the that basically helps in the filtration process and all of the biomass that is present on the filter medium. So let's just keep this video till here. I'll be continuing the video or the next video from here, this point where I left now. So stay tuned and thank you for watching this video.